the channel The Art Chick. Welcome to my channel. I am really excited about my next project. We will be doing this beautiful mountain scene that includes pine trees, a beautiful sky, water with reflection, and then obviously the grass below. And for this, I chose a bigger canvas. I wanted to use a 24 by 36, and we will also be using oil paints, and I have very specific supplies that you will need, and I'll list those below in my description. And when I do my tutorials, I break it up into easy steps to follow so that you're not overwhelmed. And so as a beginner, you can follow along and feel comfortable. Also, one thing I wanted to point out, you can see this pink mist over here. There was actually a forest fire when this photo was taken. And I love the effect of that pink that shows up there in the background. So anyway, get out your art supplies. You're going to have a really good time, and I hope you enjoy the process. To begin the painting, all you need are 3 supplies. You need to have a ruler, a Sienna brown pencil or any brown Prismacolor pencil, and then an art gum eraser. You can see that mine is well used. It's halfway gone, but that's okay. And I want you to take that ruler. We know that this is a 24 by 36 canvas, and so we want to start our horizon line just above the middle. Vertically, this is 24 inches, and half of 24 is 12, and so half would be right here. So here's the halfway mark, and we want to take our horizon line and just be barely above that. And so I want to go up to 13 inches on my canvas. So remember, this is a 24 by 36, and we are going to go up 13 inches all the way across. And just make sure that your ruler is lined up on the bottom correctly, and just make 3 marks on your canvas all the way across. And that way, when you go to draw your line, everything is lined up perfectly. And so now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to draw my line across that canvas. And again, this is my horizon line, the line that separates the land from the sky. So we have a beautiful horizontal line right here. So the trees are really pretty, and I love how they're taller up here and then they taper down to really tiny down along here. And so I want you to start about right here, and we're going to do almost like a lightning bolt shape with our pencil. And you'll come down first like this, and then I want you to shoot back up like that. And then we're going to do a gradual taper as we go down. We're going to get pretty dang skinny as we go down toward the center. And then it almost comes up again and down again and up again. And there's just a little bit of a variation with the trees. And then they stay about the same, still with a little bit of a variation. And then they barely go back up over here. And in this area, you can kind of shelf off too, like you can go up and do almost a step pattern with the trees. That's not the exact shape that you will see when you start painting. That just gives you a general idea of where the trees will be. And so we can erase these extra lines right here. Super easy. And then as we're doing our sky, I do want you to drop down below that line a little bit so that we can paint the trees over. So this just gives you an idea of where the bulk of the trees will be. We do have to show the sky back behind those trees, but this is the area that I want to start painting first. But before we do that, we need to also draw in the land. There's just a little sliver of land right here, and then there's the lake in front of that. And we want to allow a lot of space for the grass because the grass is absolutely stunning. And so we want to make sure that we make a lot of room for that. But for now, I want to show you how we are going to shelf off this piece of land. So I want you to draw just a little corner over here, like a V shape, and it's going to be pretty skinny. And you're just going to follow parallel with the line above, the horizon line, And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight because there is some variation in that line with the lake. But there you can see there's a chunk of land, and then the lake goes back behind here, and there's going to be another line that shows reflection that is parallel with this line, so the other side of the horizon line, and we're going to draw that down, and then this one actually kind of tapers and widens and then gets really skinny again right here. So you can see some perspective happening here. And over here, we have a dark area that there's the shadow of the lake. And this also comes down to about right here. And then there's a little shelf, okay, a little jog that goes in, and then it comes back out again. And then we are going to go straight across, stay parallel with that line. And again, this is just a really narrow area right here for the lake. But see how you can see that now there's this perspective in here of the lake, and you also have some shadowed areas, and as we shade that, you'll be able to see more clearly. And on this little shelf of land right here, this little piece that comes out, I want you to shade just right here to show that that's where the grass is, and there's a shadow. You'll see some green grass right there. And then up here where the trees are, there's actually a tiny little sliver of land that you can see. It's a little line, and this line is the base for the pine trees to be painted. And so I just want to go in and do this skinny little line all the way across right here. And then just have it disappear. And then back in here, we are going to draw another line that comes across and down on an angle like that. And see how that just pulls you back into that scene? You can just see everything clearly coming together. And over here we have, so this is the land, the yellow. And as part of the lake, we want to have a shadow that comes down, and it's the shadow of the trees. And so I want you to draw down from this little jog, this little island that sticks out. I want you to come down on an angle and just come across here like this. And you're just drawing that line in there. This is going to be a dark shadow that shows the trees. And then just have it disappear off of the canvas right there. And then below that, we have a line that goes across right here, and that's showing another shadow. So I'm going to draw that in, and then this one disappears, it just fades out and goes away. And let me show you, as we begin shading, you can see how there's a bright area of the lake in here that we want to reveal. And the only way we can reveal that is if we go in and we start shading. And so I want you to take your pencil and I want you to go down and in, so you'll skip this line and come down to this one. And I want you to shade in there. And this is part of the lake, but it's where the trees are. And we're just making it easy on ourselves so that when we start painting, we have these shadows already there, so that it's easy to distinguish where our lights and darks are. So I like to do a little bit of prep work before I even begin painting. For that very reason, it makes it a lot easier than trying to guess as you go. Come down and do the same thing down here. So you'll skip this area, that area stays light, and then come down here and color this one in dark as well. And then over here, we want to color in a shadow just beneath this area. Okay, so this area will be light. It's light all the way across. And then we have the dark area, which is right along here. So we need to draw one more line. So I want you to go, take your pencil and start right here, and I want you to draw right across this area, and then just have it disappear like that. And we're going to go in and shade this. And so take your pencil, fill in this dark shadow. And then it just fades away. Back in here we have the land, and it separates from the lake. But with that line, you can just go across and do just a really light shadow down underneath there so that you can see it better. From there, I want you to do another line that comes out like this. Just scribble it across. Now we can start to see where you have land. The trees will all be up in that area. Then we have the ground, the shadow, and then the water and the reflection, and another shadow, and then the green below that. And this area is just a wide open space that's lighter, but all of this is water. We have the basic outline of where the trees will be. And in the photo, the clouds also play an important role in the perspective of the picture. The clouds follow the curvature of the landscape, and I love that. And so there is a line that comes down like this with the clouds, and then it kind of goes up again, and it goes down, and it goes up again, and then you can see that there's 3 arms that just come up, almost like flames. And so I want you to draw that in, and then down here there's a swoop that happens, and it goes like this, and then it slowly just goes off. And this one connects with these arms, so you can just bring that over like that. But what we're trying to do is we want to get that formation of the clouds so that when we go to paint this, we are following the flow and the pattern of our drawing, and that will really help you do this easier. And also there's another layer of clouds up here that follows that pattern. And then I'm not really going to do a lot of detail. I want it to be very basic. You just need to know the basic formation and the basic flow. And then there's a little bit of blue down here, so I want to separate this little spot so we can show that blue. So there you have just a basic drawing of our landscape. You've got the blue sky back here. You start to get the pink wispy clouds and the yellow of the smoke and the orange and the pinks. And then over here we have the basic formation of our trees. That will change. We are going to bring down the sky a little bit into here so that we can paint the trees over it. And then the trees carry all the way across here, and then we have our lake and all the shadows of the lake. And then we have, of course, our grass down below. So now what you need to do is just clean off your canvas, get all of the eraser shavings off so that you don't have a big mess. And then I'm going to go over the colors with you of what we need to be using for the sky. Okay, so you can see that I have all of my paints on my paint palette. And my paint palette is just a matte board covered in wax paper and then taped underneath. And the reason I do it that way is because it's such an easy cleanup. I don't like a lot of mess and headache when I am cleaning up a painting or cleaning up after a painting. And these are the paint brushes that I'm going to be using. You can see that I have a good variety here, and I'll go over those as we go along. But these are for the sky, and they'll be very crucial. And let's go over what colors I have on my palette so that you can do the same thing. So I started out with titanium white, and you can see that I used a generous amount of that. We will use probably even more than this. And so I always purchase a great big tube of titanium white and smaller tubes of the other colors. So starting here, we have titanium white, and then we have French, Ultramarine Blue, Cobalt Teal, Prussian Blue, Cobalt Blue, Cerulean Blue, and then we have Winsor blue-green shade, and then I have Ivory Black, Cobalt Violet, Permanent Rose, Raw Sienna, Flesh Yellow, Cadmium Orange, and Cadmium Pale. And these are beautiful colors that will combine the blue area of the sky and then also the smoky area. And I love how in that left corner we go from a gorgeous blue over to the right to a smoky, misty looking sky. And so I want to start with the blue, and you'll just take your palette knife, and I'll move my brushes just for this because I will be using that paper towel. So I just removed my brushes, and I wanted to show you a few more supplies that you will need to get started. And this is a paper towel, obviously. I like to fold it over, and I'll use this side, and then I flip it and fold it over again, and then use the other side. And then that just helps me recycle my paper towels so that I don't go through too many. And this is my cleaning tank. It's a Silicoil tank, and it has coils inside, and I like to put Terpenoid natural or odorless Terpenoid in here, and that's what I use to clean my brushes. And also I have Liquin, and I put the Liquin in this cup so that I can just use it as I go. You can pour it onto a particular color, or you can dip your brush in there, but it is nice to have it over here so that it's not making a big mess. And that's all that you need to get started. And obviously your palette knife, you have to make sure that you have that. And you can see that I have used all of these supplies quite a bit, and you can see all the paint, but that's okay. It's okay to get messy as an artist. Don't feel that everything has to be perfectly tidy. All right, so we need to start mixing our colors for the upper left corner of the painting, and that's our blue area. I want you to take the Cerulean Blue over here, and let's start over here in the corner and take some titanium white, and we're going to lighten that up quite a bit so you can see how beautiful that looks. If you have anything on your palette, make sure you take it off. You don't want any debris on there. So we have a beautiful light color. I like to take the paint on my palette knife and just take it off, just remove it. So I'm going to use this color as well. And now I'm going to take the Cobalt Blue, and I'm going to mix it in to that swatch. You can see that I just darkened that a bit. That's a beautiful shade. And then I want to go to my Cobalt Teal, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm wiping off the excess paint from here on my palette knife over into this swatch, and I'm adding that Cobalt Teal to it. And see how there's just a slight change of color with each swatch. And we will be using all of these. And that's going to also turn into a darker shade, which I want to use my French Ultramarine Blue. So I'm going to take just a little bit right here. So I just wiped my paint over here off of my palette knife once again, and this is the French Ultramarine Blue, and you're going to mix that together. Now we don't want this color to be that crazy and that dark, and so I'm going to wipe off the excess paint on my paper towel this time, dip back into the paint, the white paint, and then I'm going to lighten this up. Okay, so it's light again, but it's a totally different shade. And then along with that, I want to make it look slightly purple. And so I'm going to go over to my Winsor Blue Green, and that's right here. And also I'm going over to my Cobalt Violet, and I'm putting those two colors in there, and I'm mixing. And you can see that this swatch is starting to change. I need a little more of that violet color, so I'm going to go over and pick up a little bit more with my palette knife and mix that in. It's getting a little bit darker. We still want a little more color, so I'm going back over to that French Ultramarine Blue and adding more of that, and then mixing it in. And then you can take a hint of Ivory Black and mix that in as well. And then you have a nice grayish, darker blue color. So now we have 4 shades of blue. I'm going to swipe my palette knife again right here, and I want to get even darker. This time I'm taking the Ivory Black and I'm mixing it into this. And you're going to get a dark gray color, and we'll definitely use that. But this time I want to add the permanent rose into that swatch. And look how pretty this color is. You have a reddish tint here, but it's still blue. And then I'm going to swipe it over here, get that excess paint off, and then this time I'm adding white. And then watch what happens. You get a pretty rose color. It's actually lavender. It's kind of a gray lavender. So see how we are going from a light blue to a medium blue, and then we just get darker and darker as we go, and then we're getting light again right here, but it's changing into a different hue. So it's going from blue to the purples. Well, now we need to be going into the pinks and the yellows, and so I want you to take the cadmium orange, and I want you to get the permanent rose and the flesh yellow and some of the violet here, the Cobalt Violet, and mix all of those colors together. And it's going to be pretty wild at first, but we are going to make a lot of colors off of this one crazy swatch of paint. Okay, so it's really dark right now, and I'm going to swipe this over here. We're going to use it in just a second. Now wipe off your palette knife. And I do want to add some white, quite a bit of titanium white to this swatch. So watch what happens when I mix this in. It won't be quite so crazy. But we needed those colors to make this. So this almost looks like bubblegum, the shade of bubblegum, or a dusty pink. And that's what we want right there, okay? And then you can even swipe that on top of those colors and then clean off your palette knife. Now we're going to get the cadmium yellow and mix it in. And again, it's crazy, but if we get the titanium white, it's not going to be quite so ugly. So get the titanium white, mix that in, and notice how we are getting that smoky color that's in the sky. Look how pretty that is. And then we need another shade that's lighter than that. And so I'm going to get my excess paint off, clean off my palette knife, and I'm getting more yellow, and I'm getting more titanium white. I'm mixing those together. And it looks like I need even more white than that. So I'm going to get a little more white, mix it in. And look how beautiful that color is. So see what's happening here? We went from blue to purple to pink to orange to yellow, and now we need a reddish color, an orangey red. So I just wiped off my excess paint here. I want to take that flesh yellow, and I want to take cadmium orange, and I want to take a little bit of sienna brown and that permanent rose and mix those together. And I think I'm going to leave this one as is, because I will just gently put in a little bit of paint into my clouds with this color, and then it will blend into the other colors and look really nice. So one more, let's do yellow ochre, and I did clean off my palette knife for this, and some ivory black and cadmium orange. And this makes a really dark color. Obviously we are not going to put a color that dark on the sky, but what I'm trying to do here, and I just added more cadmium orange, is I'm doing a dark toner color that will give us that smoky effect. And I need more titanium white. And now I'm going to mix a generous portion of that titanium white into that brown that we just created. And it's making this dirty, creamy color. And we want that, like I said, to tone down some of the bright colors. And I do want to darken it just a little bit more. So we'll leave that swatch and then wipe it off over here, wipe off your palette knife, add a little more yellow ochre and a tiny hint of the ivory black again. And then mix that in, and then we have one shade darker. Go a little bit darker than that, so repeat the process. Yellow ochre, ivory black, and now we have that darker gray. You can even do a hint of that rose, not too much. And then you still have a little purple color in there. Okay, so these are amazing colors to start our sky, and as we go, if we decide that we need more colors, we can, but isn't this interesting that for the sky you need that many colors? And like I said, we probably will come back and add more as we go, but this is a good start. And now we will get Liquin and mix it into some of these colors as we work, and I'll show you what paintbrushes to use and where to start on the sky. To start off, I'm going to work in this corner, and this is a 1.5 inch Master's Touch flat brush, and just make sure it's nice and clean and ready to go. And I'm dipping my brush in my Liquin first, so I'm going to dip it, and then I will go right to the darkest of the blues that I mixed. So not the purple, but the darker shade right next to the turquoise color. And I want to go up into this corner and start painting. So you'll notice that it's pretty dark. And so what we're going to do with that, we have that corner all nice and painted. But to lighten things up a little, I want you to wipe off your paintbrush, and then you are going to dip into the lightest shade of blue that we mixed before, you know, the purples. We did the light blue, the medium blue, the turquoise blue, and then that darker blue. And so we are going to dip the paintbrush into the Liquin again, and then go to that light blue. And I want you to take that light blue and then paint right below the darker blue. Okay, and pull that color down into this area, like this. Okay, so right now it's really gloppy, and we want to take our paintbrush and just blend the lighter blue with the darker blue. And then we want to start incorporating our pinks as well. But one more spot, I want you to take that light blue and come up here and paint right into that dark blue like this. And you can see how pretty that is. Just getting a gorgeous blend of blues in here. And we're not done. We will go back in and blend that a little bit better. But I want you to clean off the paintbrush, get all of the blue off of it. So put it in your Terpenoid Natural in your jar and just clean that off. And then we want to dip into that flesh tone color. It's that pinky light flesh tone color. So you can see right here how light that is. It's almost a peach color. And I just want you to add a little bit of that in here, not a lot. Okay, so we have some color there. Get the corner of your paintbrush and paint some pink. So that beautiful bubblegum color. And right now it's looking really funny, but that's okay. That's what we want for a minute. And now I want you to take the other corner of your brush, put pure titanium white on it. And what will happen is that white will start to blend everything together. Okay, so that pink and that flesh tone and the white, they all come together in a medley, and it starts to look really, really pretty. Now notice how I keep bringing my brush down and I'm adding more white as I go. That white is super crucial because it helps blend into the blue. Okay, now what I'm going to do with my brush, I'm sweeping it over the blue with that pink fleshy color. I'm going to get more titanium white and add it up into here. Same thing, I'm just sweeping into that blue, making it very light, very wispy. Okay. And then I want to take my fan brush. So here's my fan brush. This is a size 12 Princeton Art Brush Co fan brush, and I've had this for years. I love it. And I want to take this and go up and do an X pattern with my paint. And I want to keep doing that X pattern until I can't see any lines. But what this does is it really makes that wispiness come to life, and it looks very natural. So I'm coming down into here and I'm wisping the blue into the pink and the pink into the blue, and it just gives it this gorgeous natural wispy effect. So it's really light. You can barely see the pink, and I'm noticing that I want a little more white in there. So now I'm going to take this paintbrush. This is a round brush, and it's also a Princeton Art Brush Co brush. It's a 6000 FB. This is an old paintbrush too, but you can see how it's rounded and you can see the size. It's a beautiful brush to use. And I'm going to take pure white, and I want to go at the base of the pink and add the white in there. I'm going to pull it forward. And right now it's kind of choppy, but that's okay. That's what I want. And then I'm going to add a little more over here. And what this does is it lifts that cloud out of complete dullness, and it brings it to life a little bit more. And so I'm going to come over here and do the same thing, just adding a little bit of white. And then I'll take my fan brush again and I'm gently going to paint. I'm barely even touching, honestly, and I'm just barely painting over that white because I don't want the white to disappear. I want it to still remain pretty strong. Now you can see the gorgeous wispiness, and it actually matches almost exactly to the photo. So that's how you do a color blend when you are painting with blue and with pinks and with the yellows. And we're going to continue across here doing that same type of thing. Down here is where our blue continues, and then up here the blue and pink continues, and then we go into the yellows and those golden colors. That pink, I just want you to pull this way a little bit so you don't have a blob. And then one more thing, as we add the blue down in here, I want you to bring it down into those trees just a little bit. And make sure you have that liquid on your paintbrush. Okay, I just added some white as well, just to lighten it up. And go down into those trees. And just pull this direction. You do want to see some of the sky behind those trees. And so I'm bringing that blue up into the pink just a little bit right here. And then that will fade as it goes back into the pink on the right side. And even down below, like you can add some pink down in here. But yeah, just drop down the sky into where the trees are supposed to go, so that as I paint those trees, they'll come up over that sky and it will look very natural. So that blue is extending over into the left side. I want to do a lot of pink and yellow in that area. So I'm dipping my brush in the Liquin again. And I'm getting a hint of pink. So I'm getting mostly flesh tone on my paintbrush, and then I have just a hint of that bubblegum pink color. And I want to come down over into this area and start painting. Now notice how dark it is. We want to lighten that up. And so now I'm going to take some yellow. And still, it's really crazy. You don't want to be that crazy. So I just did a little bit of yellow, and now I'm going to take a big gob of titanium white, okay? So it will seem kind of crazy at first, but it will all start to come together as I paint. Now you don't want the yellow to be right next to the blue, the strong yellow. You want to make sure you have a lot of white when you get next to that blue, because yellow and blue will make green. And so just be very careful with that. You can see that mine stayed pretty neutral. Okay, now even with this brush, you can do the X pattern as well. And if your paint starts to stiffen up, just get more Liquin on it. I'm even going to pull this yellow over into the clouds in this area. And then up here. And then down here, it's really golden yellow and it's super pretty. And so I'm going to get a lot of my yellow and come down. Now it's not that dark, remember, we're just starting out that dark, but then I'm going to bring white into that area. So now I have a lot of titanium white. I want to come down and neutralize this area so it's not too crazy. Let's see how pretty that is to go from the blue to pinks to yellow. I'm taking a lot of white right here, and I want to separate that yellow from the blue so that we don't have that crazy green trying to happen. And I'm going to get my round brush and blend that area in. Okay, and then once you've done that, then you can take your fan brush again, but this time I would clean it off because it has a lot of blue. So it's all nice and clean, and I'm going to go in and do my X pattern again. And that just softens everything. Now you can see it looks pretty dead and dull in that middle section, and so that's where we need to pull in some more blues. And so I'm going to take my big paintbrush and clean it off. It has a lot of yellow on it right now. Where I'm working with blue, I like to separate those colors, so I'm cleaning my brush off. And now I want to go into my second swatch of blue that I mixed, and I'm going to pull some of that color into here. Just want to weave that in gently. Okay, so I'm doing these splashes of blue across here. And make sure you get more Liquin on your paintbrush as you're working. Okay, and I don't want to get carried away, but I do want to add a little bit right there too. And then you take the fan brush again and go in and just gently stroke that blue into your color. So see how softly I'm moving my arm and my hand? Okay, I'm being very gentle, just swaying back and forth. I'm barely even touching the canvas because I don't want to see paint strokes. You want to get some white up in there to soften things. So I'm taking my paintbrush and up in here, this is my round paintbrush. Up in here I want to paint white. I'm going to go across here as well. And I want some up in here. And what we're doing is we're just building our color so that it's not flat. You don't want it to look flat. You want everything to flow beautifully together. And you don't want that blue to be quite so strong either. And so by adding that white, we can really tone things down, make it look really neutral. Taking my paintbrush again, I'm doing my soft X pattern. I want you to take the paintbrush, and we're going to do a lot of white right here. And then along with that white, I want to come in with some light lavender. So that really light grayish lavender color, I want to pull that in right here. So notice how I'm using each of the colors. I'm just gently placing them in certain areas because I want to use all of them. There's also a hint of pink, but this time we're going to use that bright salmon pink. And I just want to touch in here. Remember how I said I would just touch a little spot and then pull it into the clouds? That's what I want to do. I don't want to get carried away. I just want to show just a little hint of that color in there so that it's present. And even in here, we want to add more color. Okay, now watch what happens when I take that fan brush. And again, I'm going to do that swaying, the X pattern very gently. Now this is when painting becomes therapeutic. If you're having a bad day or you can't keep your mind from racing, when you paint like this, it puts you in a different state of mind, and it's very relaxing. It will bring your heart rate down. And the other benefit is you have a beautiful skill and a beautiful painting that you can keep forever. So it's worth all the effort. See that magical blend of colors? See how it's all coming together? I'm going to pull this yellow up into this mid-region up here so that it blends even more. And then up here we want to add more white. So I'm taking my big paintbrush, I'm going to come across here with more white, and I have a little bit of pink on my paintbrush, and that's okay. You can also take your brush and do some swirls just to get a little more texture in your clouds. So I'm just doing half circles. When you go to do your fan brush, then you just do the X pattern over those swirls, but it maintains the roundness that you created with that paintbrush. And so you can see just a little bit of puffiness in your clouds. Okay. give some texture and patterning to your sky, and it looks really nice. Okay, so we need to add some purple up in here, and just take your bigger paintbrush. It has some white still on it, and I want you to dip into the darker purple and the lighter purple and the pink all at once. So I have all three of those colors on my paintbrush, and I'm going to go across the top right here. And as I work my way into the white, it will lighten up on its own. It's really, really nice when you can have every single color that we've mixed blended in to this sky. And so I'm doing my fan brush again, just back and forth, and adding more dimension to the sky with each color that I add. And see how much prettier that is with that purple framing the top of the sky. And then down in here, let's do the center first, and then we can work our lighter colors into the central part of that area. So I'm leaving the same colors on my brush that I used up there, and I dipped my brush in some Liquin, and notice how that color just fits in very nicely in here. You want it to be light and wispy, and then add yellow right in here. I'm going to dip my brush in titanium white one more time, and then just use that to lighten the yellow. And then pulling that yellow up into the purple. And look at that gorgeous gradient. I love the warmth that creates. And then down along here, it actually gets a little more orange. And so I'm going to take my brush and dip into that copper, almost tangerine color, and very gently I'm going to paint down along here. I'm not going to get carried away. And see how beautiful that is. And over in here, I still want to lighten up that blue a little. And so I'm going to dip my round brush into white, just straight titanium white. And I want to pull that color this way and then back to the left, just to lighten up that blue a little bit. And then take your fan brush and blend those colors together. I'm pulling upward right here. And then in this area, we want a little more pink, and so I'm dipping in the bubblegum color and that bright salmon pink. I want to add those shades in this region right here. We don't want it to be overwhelming, so now I'm going to dip into the yellow. I'm going to add some yellow over in here. And then immediately I'm going to add titanium white again. And that will lighten that up. And see, this brush is also really good for the X pattern, so you can go back and forth. If you look closely at my painting, you don't see the lines of the brush strokes because I'm doing that X pattern and I'm blending the paint as I go. And then up here, we have more white. Don't hesitate to use the Liquin. That Liquin is really nice. It makes the paint glide across the canvas without your paintbrush getting stuck. I'm pulling that yellow over into the sky over here. And then up in here, there's some more blue. So I'm going to take that blue, bring that over here. So see how easy skies can be? They look very intimidating and people get scared away when doing a sky, but really it's not that hard if you just know how to blend your colors together and if you use the right paintbrushes and the right brushing techniques. This fan brush is the very best tool to have when painting a sky. So it looks like we need a little more color over on this right side. So I'm dipping my paintbrush in the lavender and the bubblegum pink. And I'm just adding a hint of color. I also want some salmon pink just to get a little more red in there. So just finishing this up, I want you to take the fan brush and go right to the center and just blend that area together a little bit more. And then the beautiful thing about the sky is that as we start painting the trees, it starts to look more realistic because you're painting over this paint that we've applied here. So you'll see the sky in the distance, and it just gives the painting a lot of depth when you have those trees coming over the color. But if you don't have a fan brush like this, please, please, please invest in one. They are amazing. You won't be sorry. So we're going to let this dry, and I want to get started on the trees, but I think I'll let this dry for a day. Then I can get going on showing you how to mix the colors for the trees. And keep in mind that we will still be using some of these colors in our water and in our grass, so your paint won't be going to waste, especially if we just keep going and work quickly. If you let the painting sit for a week, then yes, you will definitely have to remix paints, but if you just keep going, then you won't have to remix everything. That's the beauty of oils as opposed to acrylics. Where we just finished the sky, now we want to think about doing the trees. Now I have let my painting dry over the weekend. On my palette I added 3 new colors, and before I show you those, I just want to point out we are working on this area right here next, and we want to start out with a fairly dark background all along here, and we will be working with some dark blues, grays, greens, and then we will have some of the pine trees coming up in front after that dries. But while we're waiting for that to dry, we can actually start the pine trees in the back, coming off of the base color down in between these trees. And so that's really fun to think about, that we can be productive today with that background color in starting the trees back here, but then also when that dries, going back in front and doing the lighter trees. So let me bring my camera down so that you can see. I added 3 new colors, and that's burnt sienna, and we have Winsor Green Yellow shade. And then this one is Permanent Green Light. And those three colors, in addition to everything else that we have in here, will give us all the colors that we need. Now, I noticed that my blues dried up a little bit, and so I'm going to freshen up that paint. I also added more yellow and orange because I was out. So you might need to do the same. So restock your paint supply on your palette. We probably will incorporate all of these colors as we go. So be prepared, and I'm going to go ahead and mix mine now. As far as the new colors go, I want to show you how to mix those shades. So I will start with the Winsor Green Yellow shade, and I'm just going to find an empty spot here on my palette. And I'm working on that dark shadow behind the trees. And so I want to use that one, and then also Burnt Sienna. And I'm mixing those two together to get a warm green. And you can see on my palette knife, it's still really dark, and we want that. But we want to do a few variations, and don't worry, if you go over some of your other paints, that's fine. I'd rather do that than start with a brand new palette, because again, I want to use a lot of these colors, so I want to keep everything here and accessible. But now I'm going to take that Winsor Green Yellow shade, and I'm going to come over here and do a lighter version. So this time I'm taking the Permanent Green Light, and notice how I did not wipe off my palette knife, I just left the paint on there. That's totally fine. Okay, so I have this lighter shade, but it's a little too light for me, and so this time I am going to wipe my palette knife, and I'm going to dip into my red over here, and notice how that darkened that green quite a bit. It warmed it up, but it's still lighter than this one. That's what we want. And that color that I dipped in, that's Permanent Rose. And now I'm going to bring my palette knife, I have that green on there, and I'm going to come over here and swipe. And this time I want to do a black and blue variation. And so I'm going to take my Ivory Black, and I'll swipe on top of that green, and then I do need just a little more green, so I'm going to dip my palette knife into that Winsor Green Yellow shade, and I'm adding more. And then I want to come over to my Cerulean Blue, and I'm also pulling this other blue into it, so there's that lighter blue that's also getting into that shade. What I have here is a blue shadow along with the warm shadows of the greens over here. And I need another shade that's lighter of this variation. And so I'm going to take my palette knife with this color. I'm going to slide it off of my palette knife and then clean my palette knife. And then I want to go back to that Cerulean Blue. And I want to go to my Titanium White. And this will lighten up quite a bit. You can see that it's still green. You can see the green in there. It's actually a really pretty color. And I want to dust the tops of the trees with this color. I think it's really pretty. Okay, so that's green, and then I have the Cerulean Blue in there, and then obviously this color as well. And then we need a gray. We need a really good gray, and this gray has a pinkish tint to it. And I am going to go over this color here and just do my gray right here. So I have Ivory Black, and then I want to take Titanium White. I also want to do Yellow Ochre, and I'm going to mix those together. And this will give me a warm gray. You can see that I don't have enough warmth in there, so I want to add a little more. You can even take a hint of orange, and the orange will definitely help with that. Just keep adding until it looks like a warm gray. It starts to turn a pinkish color. All right, and I wanted to freshen this up, so to do that you can take all of your blues right here and then swipe them and then add your white And voila. That was pretty easy. I just went across here. I didn't use this darker one, so don't worry about using that one. And that is your Prussian Blue, so don't worry about that. But I used my Cerulean Blue, I used my Cobalt Blue, and then Cobalt Teal, and my French Ultramarine Blue, and just a little bit of each, and then a lot of titanium white. So these colors here are going to be excellent, but I still feel I need one more color. We need a deep brown color. And so I'm going to take that Permanent Rose and the Sienna Brown, and I'm going to come over here and mix those two together, and then I'm going to add black, Ivory Black. I have this beautiful, rich, dark red color. You can see that. So that's the plan. We have these amazing colors to use for our background, and I'm going to show you how to paint the trees now. I'm going to start back in here, and I want to start with my really rich dark greenish blue color, and that's the darkest shade that we mixed other than the one that has the red in it. And I just want you to take your brush, and it will seem weird and kind of out of place for now because it is just your background. And so you have this really dark green in here, but I want you to incorporate the other colors as well. And so now I want you to take the bluish, the other bluish green shade that's a little bit lighter, and come down in here and also incorporate that. And so between the two, you will just be doing an X pattern. And then down at the very bottom, we're going to do something different. I want you to take that smaller round brush. This one doesn't have the name on it, but you can see the size. Anyway, I'm going to dip my brush in my Liquin, and then there is this beautiful glow of blue down below, and that color, that brand new gray color that we mixed, that has the green in it, I want you to go down at the base of this green that we're doing and come across with this color. And the reason why is because when you look at a forest, a lot of times there's mist and shadows, and you just want to get that effect of a mystical forest. And so this is why I'm adding this blue. And then when you go in to finish with your greens and grays and blues up here, you can start to mix the two together. Now the other color that we mixed is that red with the brown and the black. And I want you to come down here at the bottom, and we're just going to go in and you're going to go up and then down, up and then down, just to get some variation. Okay, and it will seem really weird right now, but it will make sense as we start to paint the trees later. And then up in here, I want you to do the same thing, only I want these to be sharper. Remember that this is our background, so it can look funny because we're going to be painting over it quite a bit. So don't worry about that. I want you to take your brush and that gray that we mixed, that really pretty gray, I want you to go up here and add some of that gray up in this area. And not everywhere, just scatter it in there. But can you see what's beginning to happen? We have this beautiful background that's emerging that's going to look quite natural as we start to paint the foreground of those trees. And I do need to come up a little bit higher with some of my darks, so now I'm dipping back into that dark greenish blue shade. And I want to come down and start again with that pattern. And it really doesn't matter where your trees end up. I just want you to get this basic pattern in here. You want to see some treetops, some fuzzy treetops. But notice how I have some that are taller than others, and then You'll go high, you'll go low. You can go really high on one of them. So this will look very abstract for a short time. And then in between, I want you to add that gray again up in here. Notice how I'm meeting up with the sky. I don't want any white back in here. And I also don't want any trees taller than that one. And I'm only going to show you a small area right here because I don't want this video to go on and on and on. And then I'll do time lapse. But over here, it will get lighter. You have shorter trees and then a lot more mist. And so you will get a lot more of the grays in there. But over here, it's very rich, it's very dark. And so you want to really emphasize that. So now I'm coming back in with more dark, but I'm going to pull that color, that blue color, up into it to make it look very natural. See how pretty that is? And then I'm going to go one more time with my reddish brown, and I want to go down all the way to the bottom. And I want to drop down in a couple of spots over here. Again, for variation. So I'm going through with my darker brush and I'm just adding some dark shadows in some of those areas where it got a little bit light. It's important that you have lights and darks in your base color. There's a lot of variety back there and it just makes it so much easier to look more natural. As you can see, I'm taking my fan brush now and going in and softening what I've done here, making it even more abstract. I'm going to take a fine tip brush and go up here and add some detail to these trees that are in the background. And this one is a really good brush. It's a size 2 AIT Art Russian Sable shader. And what I want to do is I want to take that gray color that we mixed that has the pinkish orange tint to it, and I want to go up into where these trees are, and I'm going to just take that brush and stipple like this. And you might need to go a little bit lighter because you can see that it's pretty dark still. And so I'm going to dip into one of my purples. There's a light pinkish purple and a light purple that we mixed the other day when we did the clouds. And I'm using those as well. I just want to go in and detail this pine tree that's back in the back. Make sure you dip your brush into the Liquin and then go back and forth between those three colors, the gray, the light pinkish purple, and the light purple. You should do pretty well with those three colors, but also you can incorporate some titanium white, because what the white does is it makes it blend into the background. So see how I took that white and now I'm pulling that color outward like this, and it starts to make it look like it's disappearing. And it's also adding some highlights. And I want to bring that tree down about that far, and then I'm leaving it alone. But look how natural that looks. And now I want to go to the top of another tree, and I'm going to take that light pinkish purple and I'm going to go to the top of the tree and go over this one as well and add those colors. Now notice how I'm doing some lines with my stippling, so you can do dots and you can do lines to get that pine tree branch effect. And see how pretty that is? It's almost like you're scribbling, like I'm taking my paintbrush and I'm gently scribbling with the tip of my paintbrush and stippling at the same time. But again, you have a really pretty tree back here that looks very natural. Now, if you see the ugly sketchiness of the texture from the canvas in the background, just take your Liquin and go back over, or take that titanium white, because that white does a beautiful job of neutralizing. So if you have any texture back there that shows up weird, just take that titanium white with the Liquin and go in and repair that. Just cover it up. And don't get carried away with these colors, because if you do, it's not going to look very natural. So that's your homework today, is you're going to do this long strip right here with all those trees, and I will be doing mine in time lapse. We got all of this done, and now we need to go back over these trees and add the detail of the trees. And in this photo, you can see that there's deadwood in here, and you can see some barren bark and tree trunks. And then also there's a few layers of pine trees with the lighter pine color that we can paint in front of that dark layered background. And we'll just kind of go across this entire area and add some of that. I will do a couple of examples over here so that you know how to paint it, and then put the rest on time lapse just so that we can hurry along. And then after that, we will start the land down in here and then also the lake. So we are almost to the halfway mark. I'm really excited. And the grass, once we start that, that's probably the easiest part. So let's keep going on this and we'll get it done. For the detail of the pine trees in front of that base color that we did, I want to use that reddish orangey gray that we mixed up earlier. We had it right here, but I just wanted to mix a little bit more, so I changed areas on my palette. But remember, it's just that grayish reddish color, and along with that, we want, again, to use those three colors that we used for some of the color in that background. So we want to use burnt sienna and the Winsor green yellow shade, and then also the permanent green light and the raw sienna. Those will be beautiful in the background, and then also you can pull in some of that reddish tint that we have there. And that is the permanent rose. And let me show you a couple of ways that we can mix these colors together to get the right shade for the deadwood. And so I'm taking the burnt sienna and the raw sienna, and I'll just come over here and blend those two together. And to lighten that up, we want to add some titanium white. But along with lightening those, we want to put just a little bit of a black tint in there. So I'm going to take some of my Ivory Black and add that in, and that will give me just a little bit darker shade. And see how pretty that is? That will look really nice and neutral back there for the dead wood along with that gray. And then I want to swipe my palette knife over here with that color. And this time I'm going to add the flesh yellow and also the cadmium orange. And then we have more of a pinky color. But see how we have 3 shades of gray? You can see that there's still just a hint of gray in this one. But I like that they are all 3 warm colors. And for the lighter green, I want you to take that permanent green light and come over here, and then also take that Winsor green yellow shade and come over here, mix those 2 together. But then you're going to add the raw sienna. You have to neutralize that. You don't want it to be too bright. And then take some of the burnt sienna. In fact, take quite a bit of the burnt sienna and mix that in. But I also want to add a little more of that lighter green in here. And that is a beautiful shade to use as the lighter trees. However, we can add just a hint of yellow, and what that will do is that's just going to give it a little more pop of color, but it also makes it look more natural, like you would see a tree in nature. And then just take a hint, another hint of that burnt sienna, and apply that to that color swatch. And now we have this shade, and then we have our green that we used yesterday, and then I still feel we need one more shade of green, and this one's going to be a little bit different. So I kept that paint on my palette knife. I'm going to swipe, but then I also put my palette knife in the Winsor green yellow shade, and I'm going to take orange. Now watch what happens here. But look how it made this warm green. And anytime you're painting green in nature, you do want to have a lot of warmth. You just don't want it to look unrealistic. And if you don't have that warmth and you're toning it down, it just doesn't look real. And so it's very important that you add that. So now we have 2 shades of green, 3 shades of gray, and then we have all of our other colors that we can use and pull from if we need to. For the trees, you will want to use a couple of fine tip brushes. This is an AIT Art Russian Sable round brush, and I really like the tip on this. It's just the right size. This is a size 0. And then this other brush, this is a size 2, and it's also an AIT Art Russian Sable. You want to use Liquin again so that your consistency is right. What I love about the photo is that some of the trees are tipping, and you can see the dead branches. That's very natural to see that in nature. And that's why when you paint it, it just makes it look so much more realistic. But before we can do those, I want to work on the actual pine needles. So that's where I'm going to take this other brush of mine that I used earlier. And this is just a simple, small round brush. You can see that, you know, it's not huge. And I would give you the name, but it's rubbed off. But it's one of my favorite brushes to use. But again, just look at it next to my hands, and if you get something similar, this is really, really nice. I'm going to take that lighter shade of green that we just barely mixed, and to emphasize this pine tree right here, I'm going to take my brush and just stipple along here. And I want to be sporadic. I'm not going to stipple in a row. I'm going to stipple a little bit here, a little bit there, and just make it look like the sun is coming down and hitting this pine tree right where it needs to hit it. And it actually looks really, really pretty as you go down. And you can bring some of those branches out further if you want. It's up to you. And then that darker green, what you can do with that is go back over and shade maybe the edges of some of those splotches that you just painted of the lighter green. Just so it isn't too bright. Okay, you can see how that really made that tree look absolutely beautiful. So let me do that to a couple of them. And then I will show you how to do the deadwood, and then I'm going to put it on time lapse, and then you just get to watch me paint the entire area using those techniques, and then you can do the same. Okay, so for another tree, let's do a smaller one, maybe over in this area, so that you understand how those will look. And obviously those are much smaller, and so you want to be very careful when you're painting to not get carried away. So I'm starting at the top very gently with the end of my brush, and I'm just going to come down back and forth very gently, and you can see I have a tree. But again, I want to go in with that darker green and just gently go in. Don't add very much, but just a little bit of that dark green for shadow in there, just so it looks natural. Next, we're going to do a tree trunk right here, and that's where I'm going to use that light gray that we mixed, that warm light gray, and dip your fine tip brush. So this time I'm using the skinniest one, that size 0, and dip in that light tan, and you are going to come over here and paint a tree trunk that goes all the way up to about here. And notice how I didn't show a complete line. And then I want to take the darker gray, the one that's a little bit more cool, not the orangey gray, and I want to go in and do a second branch off of here that goes up like this. And then I want to go in and add some dead branches. And I'm really just stippling with my brush again, and I don't want to get carried away with that paint, and so I'm hardly adding any paint. I'm going in and doing very little with my paintbrush. And then the other thing, that salmon pink that we mixed when we first mixed our colors, that also needs to be in here because there's a warm reflection. And so I want you to take that color and go in and paint with that as well. Right now it stands out quite a bit. So that's where we take that dark green that we just barely mixed, and you're going to go in and fill in some of those areas that got a little too carried away with the color. I added way too much gray. But see how I just took that green and went in and filled in that area just enough that it hides some of that gray. You don't want too much. And now looking at it, it looks like an actual dead tree that's about to fall. And that's the beauty of adding that second layer on here, because it really does give this area depth. If we were to leave it, it would be very flat and plain, and it wouldn't look near as realistic as it would with us adding this. I want to get that salmon pink and also come down right along here and just add some warmth right here. Let me show you one more spot to add a dead tree. So again, I'm dipping into my Liquin, and I'm dipping into that light gray. And there's a branch that comes up right about here. And again, I'm skipping as I do the line so that you don't see a complete line. And then I'm actually going to start that salmon color about right here, just to get some warmth in there. And then I'm going to branch off with the salmon color. And I'm going to do a couple of branches like this. And then from there, we want to add that warm gray that has a lot of orange in it. And you'll go in and stipple with that color, and don't do a lot, just a little bit. And then I want to take the darker gray and go back over, tone things down just a little bit, so go back over some of what you've done. And then that next step is to take that dark green and just gently go in and add a few little shadows in there. And you can even do a couple of branches down here. Now down here at the bottom, you don't want it to just end. So again, take that green and you can follow it up and just tone it down a little bit. You can go up and down and then see how it disappears. So that's 4 different ways that you can paint these trees in here. And so now I'm going to leave it up to you to do the time-lapse portion, then we'll get started on the lake. So let's start over in here, and there is a lot of yellow in that area. So I'm going to use this Ebony Splendor size 8 paintbrush. It's made by Bright Creative Mark, and it's a 383. And with this, I want to dip into that yellow color. First, I'm going to dip my brush into Liquin, and then I want to dip into that bright yellow. And I'm going to go across here, okay? And it's not going to stay like this, because if it did, it would look too bright and bold. But on the top and the bottom of that, I want to add that olive green. And so I'm going to take that brush and go right over the top. And what I'm doing here is I'm blending the base of those pine trees with the top of the ground right here. And it's still too bright, and so little by little we're going to tone it down. And I have a beige color that I mixed earlier. It's kind of that orangey tan color. And I want to apply that in here as well. And so I'm going to take my paintbrush, and just to get the green and the yellow toned down a little bit, I'm going to mix that beige color in there. You can see how that helps to neutralize everything. I'm even going to go back over the yellow with it, and see how I'm just gently pulling my brush across. If you lose some of that color, just take your paintbrush and go back in there. And you can get more yellow in the center. And then you want to have the green on the bottom as well. And this green is that really bright lime green, that light lime green. I'm doing that one on the bottom. And sometimes your Liquin will actually make it really slick. And if that's the case and you have a thick layer of paint in the center, just keep running your brush over it like I am, and it will blend everything together really nice. And then up here, what you do to blend a dark color with a light color is you want to take that dark color. So I'm going back in and getting that green that we used before, that darker green, and I'm going to come down into that beige. And what happens is it does a blend. You can see how the two merge together, and then you want to pull that paint back up into your background so that you can't see a line. And then after you've done that, then wipe your brush off and then come down here and just soften it again. And see how that really helps to blend. And then the other thing that's going to make this green area stand out, and I want to get a skinnier brush for this. I really like this brush. I don't remember the name because the name has worn off, but you can see the size and the shape. And this one's really good for when you're trying to do little details. And so if you go to the art store and you see something similar to this, grab it, because this has been such a good brush. I've had it for years. Anyway, I'm going to take my darkest green, so the one that has the red mixed into it. So just carry that green across here. And what will happen is it will start to get lighter. I want you to take burnt sienna, just straight burnt sienna, and as you are painting that green, I also want you to do burnt sienna over it so that we can really brown down that green. And then just carry it across here. You can see that I'm staying parallel with that upper line. You want it to go all the way from left to right. Just carry that across. And you really want to avoid having this sharp contrast right here. So take that brush and go in between the yellow and the green and see how it just blends together. And up in here, just to add some variety, you can take that olive green and go up into that yellow and just paint some green up in there, just to give it some variety, see some variation in the color of the land. So when you're painting, it's all about blending the edges so that they disappear into the background and then also into the color below. Just want to really make everything look like it's natural. Let's carry that color all the way down to about here, and then we are going to do something else up in here. So take that dark green and continue across right here. Remember to apply liquid to your brush. And then up in this area, I'm going to take that lime green and a little bit of that olive green, and I want to paint the green up in here. And then this is where that land turns from green to bright yellow, and so I actually want to do the bright yellow mixed with that light orange, and I want you to paint this entire peninsula that comes out this color. Again, add some liquid to your brush. I actually changed brushes. This is back to that bright Creative Mark Ebony Splendor brush. And I'm just dipping in that light orange and that yellow. And I'm coming across here. And then come down here and blend that green. And same thing applies up in here. You want to pull some of that dark green down into the yellow, just so that you have a nice blend. So I'm going to go across here with that dark green, just to make sure I blend those colors together. And you might have to take that blue that we mixed before and also go back in there and just add a couple of highlights, and then wipe your brush. I just barely put a teeny tiny bit of paint in there. I just want it to look mystical. Now you can start to see this coming together. Underneath here, we do want to add that olive green and keep it fairly dark. I also left the darker green on my paintbrush. I'm going to go across here at the bottom of this peninsula and just add a line of green, and then have it fade right here, and then pull that yellow down to the edge of the peninsula, have it come down like this, and then blend your yellow into that green. I would bring a couple of your darker trees, just bring the dark green down a little bit so that you get some unevenness up here, so it's not a straight line, but it just makes it look more natural and makes the environment look nice and soft back in here. Take that bright yellow and go across here. Now we have a really pretty peninsula. So down in here we want to have red and that burnt sienna, and we're going to drop that down into the water right here. And after we've done that, then I want you to take the dark green, not the darkest green, but the other one, and go back over it, and that brown will show through that darker green. And then this is where you need to have your fine tip brush. So now I'm going to take my AIT Art Brush and Sable shader, and this is my size 2. And this is where you take your bright blue, that really pretty bright blue that we mixed up, and I want you to take that blue and go across underneath the green and the brown that we just did, and you're basically going to paint a parallel line. And this is going to serve as a barrier between the gray of the water and the green and brown of the reflection from the trees. And then watch what happens when I take my gray. So I'm going to take my purplish gray color and I'm going right underneath here. I'm painting that next. Get that Ebony Splendor brush ready, that square brush, the size 8 one. Clean it off, make sure it doesn't have any green on it. And then take pure white. And I want you to go sideways with your brush and go right through the middle with that color. Gently go over the blue and the white and the brown. Push firmly and look what happens. It starts to cause this beautiful blend of color. I want you to dip into your dark green as well as burnt sienna at the same time on this same Ebony Splendor brush, and go back under here and paint across just right underneath that white. And you might need some Liquin. Keep dipping in the green, dipping in the brown, and then just carry that across right here. And then up here, you also want to continue that pattern. So we're getting a stripe pattern right here. So I'm getting that gray color in there. And notice how this time I went up into the center with that gray. And now I'm going to take white and go back over that area. We are going to take this fine tip brush, and this one is a size 0 AIT Art Brush and Sable. If you don't have the exact brands, that's fine. You'll take gray and the olive green, and I want you to go in those areas that are going to be lighter, and I want you to kind of scribble with your brush. You're going to scribble downward, okay? And then do the same thing, get gray on your brush and the olive green color, and go to another area, like right here, and scribble. You're going to scribble up into the dark, and you're going to scribble down into the water. So once I've done that, then I'm going to take my white, I'm going to go up into that green, and I'm also going to pull the green down, and I'm going to blend the base of that dark and pull some of those lines into what I just barely did. I'm going to show you a technique that works really well. So I want you to take this Winsor Newton Monarch fan, and this is a size 4. It's a fan brush, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to go across, especially where those squiggled areas are. I'm going to go back and forth like I'm coloring, and then come over here, do the same thing, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Over here, same thing. To make it look even more reflective, I want you to take that dark, dark green that's mixed with red and put a little burnt sienna on your brush too. And with this fine tip brush, I want you to go right underneath the green right here and get really dark. That's where the water meets the land. And then take pure white, and in those areas that we went back and forth, I want you to do the same thing, put titanium white on your paintbrush and paint some lines in there. To make it look more real, I want you to also get some yellow in the water. and go back and forth. And get some reflection that way. And then in between those, you want to take your burnt sienna, your brown, and you want to darken in between. So I'm going to pull this dark line down right along here and just do some horizontal lines and make some longer than others. So the key is that you need to pay attention to is you have dark in between and light on both sides. And you're just going to keep emphasizing that. Okay, and it takes some time, it takes some practice, but notice how I have the light right here, the dark here, and the cool thing is you can add different colors in that dark area. I'm taking a reddish color now, and I'm going to go in and do some streaks of red because I really want a lot of reflection in there. And now I'm taking olive green, I'm adding some reflection with the olive green. You can actually take that light color and go down a little bit further into that green area. You can see that I'm smudging my paint a little bit with my hand. That's normal, so don't worry if that happens. So do you see what's happening here? It took some work to do that. The key really is to make sure that in your shadows you have some browns, you have reds and browns, and that raw sienna color. One more thing, I really want that reflection to stand out underneath that dark area, and so I'm going to take this line of white and gently go across right there. Where the land meets the water, you do want that line to be straight, and so if you find that line getting crooked, just take your paintbrush, straighten it out again. I'm going to put this part on time lapse and just watch what I do as I work. You'll see how everything just comes out at you and it's reflective. And I'm just repeating this same process, but I'm going to go in and really highlight those areas, add some browns and some reds in there, and really give depth to that water, and you'll see it emerge. All right, so now that we've done that area, we need to make this stand out even more by painting that light green and yellow underneath. And so I want you to dip your brush. This is just that rounded brush that I have. And I want you to go underneath, and what we're doing is we are separating again on this side the land from the water. And so I like to have that little barrier painted in there, just so that the water stands out a little bit better. And then the fun part is that we get to take the paintbrush and actually paint upward into the water like this. And what we're doing is we're creating grass. And we can add to this as the paint dries, but you can see that it's very fuzzy, and you can do a variation of yellow and green, but you're just going to go up into that water. Another color I'd like you to add is alizarin crimson. It's a very strong red color, and it really helps when you are painting water, just to give it that richness that you need, that depth. And if you mix that with another color, burnt umber, so you just take a little bit of each one, and I'll just take my palette knife, and down below on my palette, I'm going to mix those together because I need that deep dark color that has a reddish tint. And I still feel like up here we could go darker, and so I want to pull those two colors together and check out how dark and beautiful this is. It's going to make a huge difference in our reflection if we have a darker color underneath that bank. And you're only going to extend it to about right here, and then it disappears, but then we also need to go to the left. You can't rely solely on greens and yellows. You have to have those deep reds in there as well. But can you see the difference that that makes, having that really strong dominant color back in there? And the other thing you have to realize is that this area isn't necessarily finished. We have a base here, but we might need to come back later to add a few highlights after some of this paint has dried. Okay, from there we want to do some pinks and some greens and grays. And again, keep in mind, this will be painted over a little bit more in the future. We just wanted to get these base colors in. As soon as it dries, we can take a fine tip brush and do some little dashes in there to give it some sparkle. And if you want, you can go ahead and continue this bank across here, just so that you can see that barrier. And I would try and go lighter on the top, so you can do yellow on the top and then get more green toward the bottom. And over here, the bank sort of just dwindles and it gets a little bit choppy right here. And so I'm just taking my brush and I'm going to just chop it up right here. Okay, so over here is where it starts to turn pink, and you will want to clean your paintbrush off and get all the green off that you possibly can. And I would start with a gray color, a purplish gray, and make sure you have Liquin on your brush and start painting across. Now this might be a little bit too dark, so go ahead and get white in there as well. I want you to mix three colors, the gray, the white, and then we also need that beige color and that light orange color. And we're just going to go in, and you can keep adding titanium white so that the color isn't overwhelmingly dark. Going in, going back and forth, back and forth. And we want variation in color once again. And so I want you to drop down with your grays and come down with reflection like this, a grayish purple. Just add those in there. See how I'm doing stripes? And then also within those stripes, add just a hint of that orange. And then in between the stripes, you can get a little bit lighter with white. And then I want you to pull downward with your paintbrush where the white is, and then across. We basically have to build layers, and so the next thing I want you to do is take that olive green, mix it with the darker green, and go back in, establish your line right here. And take your white, and right up against that bank, do a line. You can also take that white and extend it over into here a little bit, and it will make the water look shimmery over here as well. So over here you want to get darker and darker, and this is where we take black and burnt umber, and I want you to come over and make a line. We want to use a fine tip brush. But yeah, just take some black and some burnt umber, maybe a hint of green, and then come over and add a dark line right across here. Make sure you have Liquin on your brush. And then this line will fade into gray right here. And then take a lighter gray right here and paint back and forth. And then I want you to also pull down those dark areas like this. Just go straight down. Also, you can do a little more gray right here. And then pull down with that color. You can even mix a hint of that beige color with the gray. You just pull it down. You can do that scribble effect that I taught you. Get really choppy with it. And then over here, you might need to get a little bit darker too, so just make sure you're watching that. You want to go in and just, darken that area as well. I want you to take the black and the gray and the brown on your brush and come down in here and just in a couple of spots, just paint a little bit of dark to frame in that water so we can see where it's going to go, and then we'll go in and add some details with the plants, but this just helps to frame in that area. And see how you can see the water and it starts to look really pretty. Okay, so now I want to go in, I'm going to get titanium white and the beige, and I want to mix the two together and a little bit of that light orange to get a really light creamy color. And now I'll go in and paint that creamy color in between each one of these. And add some red in there. And again, we have to let this dry so that we can apply a few more layers. Keep in mind that this is just a base color for now to get it established, and then we'll go in and add some more colors. But it's very crucial that we get the base in there first. And then we can add to it and make it brighter or darker, whatever we need to do. It is key to keep this area back here really dark. Really, really dark. We want that strong, strong contrast back here. And then to frame that in, you can add some green right here. Add some brown back in here. And then take a blue. I want you to pull back and forth through this red. And then another color you can do is titanium white. Up in between those. Don't be afraid to bring that dark color down further. You can pull that down into here as well. Take that fan brush and just blend things together. You don't want those to look like perfect little columns, and so you want to blend like this. And then we will go back over that and make it much more reflective later after it dries. But for now, go ahead and pull all of that lighter color over into here. Then back in here, I want to do a very light neutral color. So take that square brush, that Ebony Splendor, size 8, and I want you to start out with gray. Just take gray, and I want you to go up inside and paint that entire area. You can mix a hint of green in that gray, and then just go all the way across just to fill in that area. That gray will turn into white as we go to the right. And the water will turn almost to black, and so get your dark, dark, dark green and come over here. And actually, I want you to mix that burnt umber and that red as well in the green, and get really dark over here. That alizarin crimson and that burnt umber are really good colors to use. Go all the way back. So right now it doesn't look as reflective as we want it to be in the end, but these colors will make it possible for us to achieve that effect later on as these paints dry that we've applied. And then we can get really, really detailed and get some bright highlights in here and make it really stand out. So for now, we're going to leave it and let it dry for a day, and then you can come back to it. This is the bank of the lake, and then up here you have a grassy area, and so it turns from white to kind of a yellow and a green, and then we get into some beautiful golden colors down here. And then also we'll be working on some of the reflection in the water to make it pop just a little bit more. Now that the lake is dry, we can go back over those colors and just highlight those areas and even add a few more colors to make it really, really stand out and look shimmery. how pretty that reflection is beginning to look. So I'm going to put it on time lapse. I'm going to continue adding some more highlights in this area, and then I'll work on the banks, and then we will start the color down in here as well. As you can see, I've added some new shades of green, and I want to explain what those are. But to make those color swatches, I needed very specific colors over here. And those colors are Burnt Umber, Permanent Green Light, and Winsor Green Yellow shade. And I like this color from before, but I want to deepen the brown a little more, so watch what I do. And then to create this darker shade of green, I mixed the Winsor Green Yellow shade along with the Terra Rosa, and I added just a hint of Ivory Black. And for the lime green shade of green, I mixed the Permanent Green Light with the Cadmium Yellow. And you can lighten it with the white if you need to, and then also the shade that's just beneath that, it's a variation of the lime green, and you just add a little bit of burnt umber and it will make it more of a grayish color. And we get to use a really fun paintbrush. I really like this one. This is a fine touch 2-inch paintbrush, and it has coarse bristles, but it's going to be really good for painting the grass. And the other paintbrushes I want to use are the 1-inch Ebony Splendor 392, and it's a wash paintbrush, and it's made by Creative Mark. And then the other one is a Winsor & Newton size 4 brush, and these will be perfect for what we're about to start. And it doesn't hurt to refresh all of the other colors that we used before, just so that you can pull from those colors as we begin to work. So what's nice about doing the grass is that it will really enhance the lake. And I still feel that at the very end, after the grass has dried and everything is done, you can go back in and still add a few more little details back in here. But that's up to you. If you like it how it is, then just leave it. I might go in and add a few final touches just to enhance it. Make sure you have a clean paper towel. And you will need plenty of Liquin, so make sure you have enough of that. You want to be restocked on all of your supplies so that you get a really good experience painting this portion of the painting. I find that it's much easier when you're prepared than when you're not prepared. All right, so as you can see, I did this part in time lapse. And so this paint is really wet right now. And I did a lighter strip of the yellow and the lime green, and then the darker green underneath. And then over here, I added the yellow, the salmon color, and then some highlights of green. And when you're doing grass, another good paintbrush to use is this smaller fan brush. And this is a Winsor Newton size 4 fan brush. And it's called a Monarch fan brush. And you can go in and just turn it on its side and pull upward. And in areas that are dry like this, you can go in, add a fresh coat of paint, like I'm doing, and get this area wet so that you can do the grass. And you'll take that fan brush that I showed you, and you're going to gently paint upward with that wet paint. And you can also turn it on its side. And see how it's making a grass texture. Instead of just being a solid line, you have some beautiful texture now. And so just take your brush across there and soften that area. All right, so now for the fun part. Now that you've taken that fan brush and done some grass texture, I want you to take your big, thick paintbrush, and we're going to do first a light strip of green. And if you add a little bit of white to that lime green that we mixed, you're going to get a lighter shade. And with this big brush, I'm just going to pour some of that Liquin on there. And then you can even spread the Liquin on first if you want. And take this brush, and I want you to go across underneath that dark line. And you're going to add a heavy texture of paint. You're going to add a big solid textured line right under here. And I do want you to be abstract at this point. Just have fun. Okay, notice how I'm doing some upward strokes. You can take that titanium white and you can actually lighten up the green even more as you go across. And then take your brush and then start painting vertically again. And now I want you to take that same brush, you're going to dip in that lime green, dip in the dark green. So I have light green on this side, dark green on this side, and then a little bit of that mauve color, so that orangey pink. And I want you to come in here and add some color. Okay, we're just going to take our brush and go through and paint these random colors. Okay, I left a gap, and in that gap I want to do some yellow. So I'm going to take that medium yellow and paint that in here. And can you see what I mean by abstract? This paintbrush, it applies a lot of paint all at once, and the texture from it is just beautiful. I like that it is a coarse bristle. You can see that I did the heavy texture, and then that's when I take this brush right here and I'm going to go back in and use this one to soften everything up. I want to go in about this far. I want you to do a bunch of vertical strokes, then over here turn to horizontal. And then blend some of that into that yellow. You want to get that green up in there. Okay. and then you can turn it and do more texture. Now what's going to be beautiful is if you have yellow, white, olive green, and you go back and forth using all these colors. Now I'm going to use the medium green that we mixed. It's that lighter brownish green. And I want to get a layer of color here. So I'm taking that little brush and adding that in there, and then also come in here and do the same thing, dip back into that paint and add a line right here. And also up into here. Okay, and then take that same olive green and come down in here with the smaller brush and do some vertical strokes. And also in here we want to get more of that salmon mauve color. You want this midsection to have the browns in there. And look how the landscape is starting to come together. It's really pretty. Underneath here we have yellow, and then you can also get some orange. We have that really pretty tangerine colored orange. So if you skip around with your colors and you're using all of them, that's how you get such a beautiful landscape. And we don't necessarily have to worry about doing a base color because I'm using a variety of brushes and a variety of brushing techniques, and then all of these different colors. And so we won't have to worry about a base as long as our paint is really thick and we're using all of these different methods. Okay, now I want to get my big brush again, and I'm going to dip into 3 different colors. I'm doing yellow, both of my greens, and pretty soon I'll start using the dark greens. But look what happens when I do all of those colors at once. And again, you might have to just pour liquid onto your brush. Okay, that is a huge glob, but I want all of it. I just want to get it on there, just slap it on there. And I'm going in, and look how that Liquin spreads my paint. I'm able to use a lot less paint, but still get the texture that I want. So vertical strokes, moving along horizontally, making sure you cover all the white in the canvas. And we want to do this in rows. We want a row of lighter green, and then darker green, and then lighter green. Anytime that you need an area to be lighter, you just take that titanium white and you'll just enhance it that way. So let me put it on time lapse while I do all of this, and then I'll explain down here. But up here, before I do the time lapse, let me just show you what that big fan brush does. So now that I have all this color, I want to blend everything beautifully. And so I'm taking my fan brush and I am going vertically, and you can turn it sideways, you can do all sorts of things, but notice how I'm just gently going in and pulling upward on my paint so that you can see different layers of grass, but I'm softening it as I go across. But it's automatically making lines for the grass. And if you do short, fast strokes, you can get more texture. It's just whatever you prefer. But the beauty of this is all of the different colors that we applied in here. And then if you lose a little bit of color, like in this area it got dull, just take yellow and go back in, and you can really highlight that area and bring out the color again. And then come down here. Oh, this is so pretty. I am really excited. I am really, really excited. Okay, I'm going to put the rest of this on time lapse, and then when we come down here, I'll show you what to do next. So down here we want to get a little bit more patchy, we want more darks and lights combined, and we want to get really dark in the corner here and then down in here. And so what that will do is it will frame in all of this that we've done. But I still want to get this patch in here a little bit brighter, so I'm going to add some more yellow just to enhance that. You can even add a hint of white. And it is okay to have paint texture. You just don't want to see the texture of the canvas underneath. But to have lines of texture from your paint, that's actually really nice. It's a nice addition. And notice how by having the texture on here, you can really see how this makes it look more like grass. Okay, and especially if you stand far away. I like to come back from my painting and take a look. I'll even look in the camera to make sure that it's looking the right way. But anytime you lose texture, like in this area, same thing, you can take the paintbrush and just go in and add some highlights in there and just really enhance that texture of the paint and the grass. And then it's super crucial to make sure you have a variety of color. You can even take a little tiny hint of that brown and incorporate that in the background as well, just so that you can see variation in color. And then you can take a tiny bit of the dark green too and go in and add that for texture. All of it helps. You can even take that dark green and come back here and add some texture. Back in here you'll be doing shorter strokes. They won't be near as thick because you want it to look like it's back in the distance. And then as you get down closer, that's where you'll have the bigger strokes. But this gives it a prairie feel. It just looks really nice and lush. I want to enhance the white right here, so I'm going to add some white. Honestly, it's going to help you if you start in the corners, and so take your darkest green and the brown together. Okay, I've got them all over my brush. I've got those two colors all over my brush. And I'm going to go in this corner, and with heavy texture, I'm going to start painting. And you want to come across here. Make sure you go all the way down to the bottom of your canvas. More Liquin. Now watch what happens when I come up here with that color. I'm going to go in layers, and I want to actually travel diagonally. And so I'm going to take my paintbrush and stroke diagonally like this. And then in between, you'll have rows of dark like that. And I know you're thinking, what? That looks weird. It will for a minute. But let me show you why. I'm going to get one more dark patch down in here and a little down here. And then from there, you will take this other brush, and if you have to restock your paint to get enough of that lime green, that's what I'm working on now. I want to get more lime green on here. And I'm going to go in with my paintbrush, my smaller paintbrush, and fill in those areas where it's white. And then yellow. And you want to have the brown and then also that straw color that's really light. We're going to add patches of that in there. Now I'm being very sporadic with that. I don't want to go crazy. I just want little areas with that in it. And then the lime green in between and the yellow. But I still want more texture, so I'm going to take that same brush and I want to go in and really thicken the paint in this area. This is when I take my fan brush and I go in and I'm going to do an X pattern in here. And what that does is it makes the grass wave back and forth. So it's swaying right and left. But it's adding a lot of texture. Do short strokes. Now you can also take your fan brush, dip it in the brown. Okay, so I just did brown on the edges. I'm going to go in and I'm going to stroke that brown here and there just to enhance the color. Now don't overdo it. I can't express that enough. Sometimes staying abstract and not overdoing things makes it look more realistic than trying too hard to get it to look perfect. I can't stress that enough. I used to think that every little blade of grass had to be seen and had to be perfectly shaped, and boy was I wrong. You don't want to lose the dark. You want to keep that dark really strong. So if you start to lose it, make sure you add more. I would do it with the bigger brush. I'm going to put the rest of this on time lapse, and then you follow along. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed this project. To purchase beautiful fine art prints of my paintings, visit AndreaKirkArt.com. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for more amazing paintings to come. We'll see you next time.